There's a fantastic article by Don Berwick, the great sort of international leader of clinical change, the Harvard pediatrician and now currently, although maybe not forever, the leader of Medicare and Medicaid in the States. The article's called Eating Soup with a Fork, which is about the use of the wrong research methodology, i.e. the clinical RCT type methodology, to evaluate more obvious service change or redesign things, and the fact that because we apply the methodology as the right if you're evaluating an oncology drug to the fact that we could use something from that room over there to manage people's care really quickly just becomes a strategy for avoidance. But I think, so you're right, we're part of that conspiracy as well with that bureaucracy. But I think the thing you underestimate is that the reason people do that is because the changes we're talking about do challenge people's interests, managerially, clinically. And all the stuff that we talk about evidence is largely a cover for the fact that I don't want you to change my practice.
You talk about the people providing the solution, but we can't let people providing the problem get in the way. Otherwise, there is no solution.
Yeah, well, I need to buy a gun.
Thank you very much indeed. Can we bring the round to the gentleman at the front here, just here, on the front row? Yep, yeah, thanks. Anybody else, by the way, from? Oh yeah, right. And could we get a microphone to that lady in the front there, and then 4 rows back? Yes, sir. Your question.
Just my team have all looked at me as though you've just said the most stupid thing imaginable on the stage. When does the HSAJ go to press?
David Laszlo. I help organisations deal with health systems change. I just would like the partners from industry to respond to Mr. Easton's riposte on the subject of risk share. I thought he nailed it. There are concerns about metrics, there are concerns about attribution. Does that sum up what you said? I just wondered if there are risk-sharing models that work for services as well as the familiar ones to do with facilities and plant, like PFI hospitals.
Yeah.
So, absolutely there are, and of course they're not easy. You have to work at them to get them right, and I think at the heart of it is how you generate the openness and trust. Because if you can't generate that and you don't start with that, it doesn't matter what you have written down, it basically isn't going to work. So certainly we have examples right now where we have phenomenal risk and reward sharing arrangements with trusts in the NHS that are working incredibly successfully. But it requires the right level of sponsorship and engagement in both organisations because it takes hard work. So frankly, if it becomes a side of desk task, it's a disaster. Yeah, it's really important. And you have to have fairness and equity in those arrangements and then work at it. But I think there are some great examples in services that I won't do now, but I could certainly tell you about, and I think it can be made to work very well indeed.
Okay, let me take the question from the lady there.
Hi, my name's Sarah Chalmers. I'm at NICE at the moment, but I want to make it very clear that my employers will probably violently disagree with me and that I'm not in any way representing them. I was very worried when you said the word represent earlier. Jackie mentioned the importance of making sure that everyone was on the journey with you. Now, of course, a lot of people are very, very frightened that they won't be allowed to come. We've heard a little from Jim about how we're going to support people and train them and get their attitudes right. Does anyone else on the panel have any tips for bringing people along on the journey and enthusing them about innovation when they have fears, however well-founded they may or may not be, that they're going to be out of a job next month?
Jobs at risk, how do you deal with it?
Jobs at risk, I'm not sure, and again I will go back to my apology that I started with, which is I'm not from the healthcare industry and I live in California, but with that caveat, I talk to many companies across the world in every industry. And I go back to the vision, strategy, execution, and the fourth element I actually left off was metrics. You have to then measure and reward based upon those metrics. But what I've found talking to those companies is if you have a clear vision and strategy, and that vision and strategy is communicated across the company to every employee. You then come back to a point that I think Jim made earlier. I didn't actually hear it, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the problem isn't his, it's ours, it's everybody's. And if we're all working towards the same vision and strategy, you can then free people up, and people feel freer to go forward and do creative, innovative things. And in some cases, that might be very, very small in their world, just their personal day-to-day activity. In some cases, it will be a hospital authority in the north of England doing something creative, and in other cases, it will be ministerial at government level. But if you're all marching to the same tune, it significantly reduces the fear factor of, am I straying off course? Am I going to be penalised?
Anybody want to add anything to that? Yep, please.
So one thing we did that was very successful actually is we set up a very large reskilling enterprise. So in the last 3 years, we've reskilled more than 2,000 and redeployed more than 2,000 employees. And that it's hard to do for everybody. And I'm not even suggesting that it's possible in many cases here. That eased a lot of the fear, right? And as you measured that and as you were able to redemonstrate that, then that really helped everyone adjust to the fact that actually change was inevitable. And now actually that change process is something that's warmed and welcomed across BT. So it's no longer has a stigma actually of going through that change process. It's actually a positive reinforcement.
Jim?
Yeah. I'm just really grateful for you naming it because it's real. One of the things that makes me most sad, and we all seek to correct whenever on platforms, is that an organisation that publicly denigrates a big portion of its dedicated workforce is not a helpful thing to do, and I'm immensely proud of being a member of the NHS management community, the work we've done with our clinical colleagues to drive change, and everyone who's doing that as an NHS manager or administrator should feel immensely proud, and the public, the sort of stupid, ill-informed, knee-jerk reactions that you see played out in the media, you kind of grow a thick skin about, but it doesn't help and is untrue and is wrong, and we should all stand up every time and be very proud and assertive about the work that you and many other colleagues have done. Having said that, in a time of national difficulty, it is the right thing to do to have the minimum level of management costs consistent with delivering the job. And I have a personal view that we developed over the last 30 years an unusual model in which we separated the task of management from clinicians much more than most other countries. I think the Thatcher government took a decision against a relatively uncontrolled kind of medically led industry to create a creed of managers who were separate. Now, the best NHS managers have worked with the best clinicians to create an integrated structure, but it still is one that looks much more separate than most European or international systems where it's a much healthier mix of clinicians. And I think we're heading in that direction, so I think we should be proud of what we've done. We should accept that there's a correction that's very painful, but probably the right thing to do. We're taking some tough decisions that people don't like. I'm just to lose any residual support I have in the audience. I'm personally the person who's leading the work to create the clusters of PCTs, which is universally reviled by most people in PCTs and is designed to create some certainty for some individuals about contributing for the next 3 years to the work, but also brings forward for them a very difficult process of change. I think we'll end up in a slightly different mix in 10 years' time, but which includes a proud, empowered, essential group of professional managers supporting the change we're talking about. And stand up and when we hear it, we should stand up and counter it because it's wrong.
Can I thank you for daring to express so vigorously a question that your employer might disagree with? Sounds to me like you're the kind of person the NHS ought to be employing.
Briefly.
Right.